Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first lesson in the P module. This is called reflexation. Reflexation. Cool. All right, awesome. Having a stroke. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first lesson of the P module. I'm happy you're here, and I hope you're happy too. This is reflection and adaptation. This is all about learning from your digital mindfulness journey. So we'll talk about ways that you can actually look back on the progress that you've made and the progress that you will make in order to inform your next steps with data and with experience, which I think is the most important part. Reflection is one of the most underused yet powerful tools for success. That was said by Richard Carlson, who's an author. So in this lesson, we'll go over some strategies and tips for self-reflection and why those are important to move forward with your digital mindfulness journey. So here I have taken the liberty to pre-draw a mirror. And again, I'd like to remind you that you're here to learn about digital mindfulness, not art. And it's a mirror, all right? It's like a little handheld mirror. But this is meant to represent why self-reflection is so important. Self-reflection is one of the most integral parts of making this whole thing work. So here's some suggestions for your own reflective practice. Around this mirror, I want to write some words that you should keep in mind, like honesty, compassion, grace is a huge one, and systems over goals. So these are all things that you should be keeping in mind when you are going through the reflective process. It's a process that, like most things in this course, look very different from one person to the next. But remember, I think one of the most important parts of this is that the goal should be the system. Reflect specifically on your systems and how they are serving you. And then through reflecting on your systems and goals, make sure to be honest with yourself. Ask yourself if they're actually working. And if they're not working, figure out why and make those adjustments for yourself. Think about that idea of compassion and grace. We talked about that in the last module, but allowing yourself to be imperfect and recognizing that that is what makes you human and not getting yourself down because you didn't do something perfectly. In fact, using those moments of lowness and imperfection to really inform the next step for you. And that is a huge part of, remember, the growth mindset. So maintaining a growth mindset as you go through not only this course, but just life in general is so key for self-reflection and approaching things in ways that are informed by data and empirical experience. So some tools for reflection that you have at your fingertips at all times are journals. And in fact, you've got a journal with you right now. It is the reflection journal that we've, the guided journal that we've provided with this course. So I'll just write down journaling. Journaling is an awesome way to look back and reflect on your progress and your thoughts that you've had. I have filled so many journals in my past, and looking back on them is such a reflective and healthy process because it helps me understand myself at a deeper level. And that is not even through the context or through the lens of digital mindfulness. It's just so important for me to understand who I am as a person, and I'm sure it is for you too. So keep a journal, and especially keep referencing back the guided journal that we've provided too. Another thing to think about is that you have meditation at your fingertips. This, again, creates just such an amazing space of calm and oneness, and it's something that definitely promotes self-reflection because there is nothing that you need outside of just yourself and your brain for meditation. So make use of that as often as possible. Fit that into your schedule whenever you can. And lastly, here we have tracking progress. So whether it is your habits or your routines, simply tracking your progress when it comes to digital mindfulness and the habits and systems that you want to build, Tracking is an awesome way to look back. It is maybe the ultimate way to look back because it is literally the progress that you made on something. So implement some of these strategies into your routines in your life, and I highly encourage you to approach these all with compassion and softness and gentleness with yourself, because if no one's going to be gentle to yourself, it's you, and that is really the only way you can learn anything is through soft learning and allowing yourself to make mistakes. Up next here, we'll talk about identifying patterns, successes, and challenges. And remember, I want to sort of reiterate James Clear's habit building cycle here. This is cue, craving, response, and reward. This is again the cycle that all habits go through at all times, and identifying patterns, successes, and challenges during reflection is key to adapting and creating long-term progress. So if you can become more aware of these 4 main reasons habits happen and they stick, and if you can begin to recognize them in your own life, especially when a habit is forming, that is an amazing way to start becoming a little bit more aware of habits that you want to build and that you want to break as well. Because remember, in order to build a habit, you have to make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. If you can recognize cue, craving, response, reward in a habit that you want to build, and then automatically recognize how you should be making those cue, cravings, responses, and rewards obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, you're going to have a much better time building a habit. And if you can reflect on habits that you already have and recognize the cues about them and the cravings about them and the responses you have to them and the rewards they elicit, then you can also begin to pick apart bad habits and start making them unattractive and all of the things that James Clear says to break a habit, which in this case is making the cue invisible, making the craving unattractive, making the response difficult, and making it unsatisfying. So again, you might notice that a huge basis of all of the things that I am bringing up in this module have a lot, if not everything, to do with awareness and becoming aware of not only the systems you have, but how you think about them and how you respond to them. That way you can look back and sort of pick apart the reasons of why you are the way you are and how you can use those reasons and the picking aparts to inform your next step. Reflection on past experience. James Clear is a huge proponent of self-awareness. Extracting lessons from looking back at your past habits is super key. Identifying the patterns, learning from the successes of some habits that you have, and then learning from challenges too. What parts of your life or parts of your habits have you experienced that have made it difficult to grow and to implement maybe into your life. Remember to treat failures as lessons, not defeats. Again, I'm going to probably keep harping on that, no pun intended, for the rest of the course, because that is such a key factor in growing, and it's what separates the good from the great when it comes to people who want to develop themselves. Remember to never miss twice, because missing twice is not a mistake. It is the start of a new, probably bad habit. And remember, make habits invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying if they're habits that you want to break. So looking back at your past habits and the systems that you've built and reflecting on how effective they've been through the lens of James Clear's habit building and habit breaking process is super key to growth. Here's how we make informed adjustments. It is through the recognition that growth is a cyclical process, as illustrated by the thing that I'm about to draw, and your systems will improve with each cycle. So we've got this cycle here that goes learn, adjust, implement, and repeat. So this is the cycle that you go through whenever you're learning something, a new skill, a hobby, something you want to implement into your life. You learn it, you figure out how your body responds to it, how your brain responds to it. You make adjustments before you implement it, and then there's probably some adjusting that happens there as well, and you repeat this process. It's an iterative process. Utilize self-awareness to make actionable changes, right? That is sort of occurring at all stages, but I suppose if you can implement a little bit of self-awareness here as well as here in this part of the cycle, I think that is probably the place where it is most key to create some lasting change. Remember that it's not remember that it's not goals, it's systems, right? You fall to the effectiveness of your systems, and it's not all about goals all the time. Goals are obviously great to have, but if you can build systems that last longer than just a singular goal, then that is a place where you want to be in order to enact lasting change. Think about the 4 laws of modifying existing routines, right? We just talked about it, making things difficult and unsatisfying and unattractive, breaking those habits if those are the things that you want to do. Make sure to tailor changes based on personal patterns and tendencies, so becoming a little bit more self-aware, using things like the habit scorecard as you track your day, and then habit tracking in general, just becoming I feel like it's like bringing your consciousness to the surface of where you're at. So often we operate on autopilot, and that's what habits really are. But if you can sort of switch autopilot off for at least a day and recognize things that you do that you would otherwise do on autopilot, that is sort of that concept of bringing your awareness to the forefront of turning off autopilot. So if you can do that more often, you can begin to make informed decisions and tailor changes based on personal patterns and tendencies. And then remember, long-term consistency is the key over short-term intensity when it comes to making lasting changes. You know, it's so easy to think and to want and to maybe even be entitled to change that happens overnight, because we're so conditioned that way because of, you guessed it, social media. But if you can outlast the temptation to want something to happen extremely fast, then you're beginning to separate yourself from your past self, because that truly is one of the answers, I think, to my generation for sure, and maybe the generations after me, when it comes to making change and wanting things to change, is recognizing that it shouldn't happen fast. There's no reason for it to, and especially if you want it to be lasting and meaningful change, it's something that you have to chisel out over a long period of time. I want to bring up Liam's quote that life happens slowly than all at once. And that has everything to do with James Clear's 1% better ideology. It'll be a little bit slower, and then all of a sudden you'll recognize these exponential changes. So prioritize the long game, as it's called, over short-term success and short-term dopamine. Remember, that's the whole point of this course is getting away from that cheap dopamine that's so accessible. If you can hang on for long enough to experience the reward and the release of reaching the type of person that you want to be over a long period of time, that will set you up for success, I believe, for the rest of your life. So keep in mind this process and this cycle, which is iterative. Remember to be self-aware, as self-aware as possible. Do this by tracking your habits and being critically aware of every little movement, every little thing you do every single day. And repeat this process over and over, because it is something that happens naturally. Reflection and adaptation increase the effectiveness of your digital mindfulness journey, and routines unlock daily progress. So in the next lesson, we'll figure out how to be a little bit more consistent and how to treat your day your way. Before you go here, make sure to pick up that guided journal and flip to the self-reflection adaptation section. Learning from your digital mindfulness journey. How can self-reflection help in personalizing your approach to digital mindfulness? That's the first question. Next question is, reflect on a time when you learned from success or challenge in your digital mindfulness journey. How did this experience shape your approach? So maybe you've already implemented some of the strategies, techniques, and tactics that we've already talked about here. How did it feel? How did it feel to be successful, or did it not completely fit into the cycle of your daily routine how you wished? Think about that, reflect on it, and how might it shape your approach moving forward. Lastly here, discuss how you have adapted your digital mindfulness practices based on your insights and experiences. So if you've tried to be more mindful about your phone in the past, why didn't it work, and how have you adapted it moving forward based on the experiences that you've already had? Thank you so much for being here. This has been Lesson 1, Self-Reflection and Adaptation. In the next lesson, we'll talk about your day, your way. So I'll see you there.